Okay.
All right.
Yep. And then can they hear me as well?
Well, hopefully, we'll find out. But you go live, and we'll do those quick sound checks, and then you're good to go.
Okay. You
Brilliant.
are you going to talk me through this then?
I will. Yeah.
I'm here. You're on. You're on the phone, or should
Yeah.
I turn the phone off?
If you let's not do it over the phone. I'll do it over WhatsApp. Okay,
Okay.
you're
Yeah.
live.
Are you going to call
Hooray!
me back? Hello. Oh, hello everybody. Gosh, technology. This is uh, this is a voyage into the unknown for me. Good lord, there are an awful lot of people here. Hello, 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 hello. I'm seeing all the messages that are from everybody all going at the same time. So actually, they're moving so quickly. There are so many messages. I can't focus on any of them, other than the odd "Hello, Nigel." So hello to everybody back. Um, I gather uh, I'm going to be doing some sound tests with the guys very shortly. They're going to call me in a moment. But I think this this is all wonderful. How we can stay connected in this way, um, and I need to remember certain key things. I've done a few of these on Zoom, but the technology and all the rest of it is kind of very basic compared to this. This is super duper, um, and I've got to remember certain rules, like looking into the camera and not actually anywhere else on my computer screen, like photos of my children. Hello, 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 hello. Everybody's very friendly and saying hello. Let's hope it's like that in about an hour and a half's time. So, just excuse me. I'm going to move that nearer there. And I am hoping one of the good self-isolation choir techno chaps are going to call me and set me up with a sound test. All sounding good, Nigel. Please run one of the audio tracks. Okay, I'm going to run an audio track now for everybody, and let's see how this sounds. Levels all good. Right, it is 5 o'clock. Good evening, everybody. My name is Nigel Short. I'm the artistic director of Tenebrae, and welcome to this week's programme of work on Gregorio Allegri's setting of the Miserere. This is for the self-isolation choir. This is my first event with you guys. You're all old hands at this and very experienced at how it all works. But for me, it's all new, and I'm sitting here in my music room, which looks very cozy, but I can assure you it is freezing, and the goosebumps are also to do with nerves. But there we are. Um, a warm welcome to everybody. I gather we have um, many hundreds of people actually from something like over 30 countries joining us. So welcome, hello, and it's great to see you. Isn't this a fabulous thing that, I mean, the pandemic is dreadful, of course, but this is a wonderful thing that we can all be connected in this way with choral music. And of course, whether professional or amateur, you know, we all do this because we love it. And if you're anything like me, I've missed making music just terribly. Seeing people and the whole interaction when you're performing, or whether you're rehearsing or whatever, has been a terrible thing to lose. So I hope this. I know we can't interact, in the way we would normally in a choir practice. I can't shout at you. Oh well, I could, I suppose. But there isn't that kind of interaction. But I will do my best to sort of help you and encourage you. So look, I've got my instructions from the self-isolation choir bosses as to how we're going to run this. As I say, you know how it goes. But yes, the first thing to say is hello. I've done that, haven't I? 5 p.m. And all this week we're going to be working on the Allegri, and then I'm going to hand over to Ben England for Lottie's Crucifixus, Tallis If You Love Me, and Bruckner's Locus Iste, all wonderful pieces, and you'll be in the safe hands of Ben then to take you through that. So right, gosh, they're asking me to say a little bit about myself. So Nigel Short, gosh, there isn't very much to say. It's very boring, really. I'm obviously living in England, just outside Cambridge, and I joined my local church choir when I was 7 years old. Nobody in my family ever went to church. Nobody was remotely musical. I just met a boy in the playground and said, do you fancy coming along to a choir practice? And I thought, well, got nothing better to do at home. All my brothers and sisters are much, much older than me and nobody to play with. So off I went, and I walked into this church that was built in the early 13th century. St Alphege and Solihull, and was instantly, I don't know, hooked. That's the only word I can say. The smell of the stone, the architecture, I'd never seen anything like it as a little boy. And then the sound of these boys singing in the church, coming from the distance, was utterly magical. And I think I was spellbound. That's the only way I can describe it. And ever since then, there's something about this, the sound, the effect of voices together, that has been magical for me, and it's of course become a huge part of my life. I'm married to a singer, and my 2 children are singers. They're 11 and 13, and they sing pretty much every day. And yeah, I just love choral singing, and it's a real bug. I sort of got into it by singing, and I was a singer for many years. Don't ask me how, but I seemed to have a relatively successful career as a professional singer. I joined Westminster Abbey Choir when I was 19 years old, whilst I was studying at the Royal College of Music. I joined the Tallis Scholars at about the same time, and I also did a fair bit of opera singing. And when I was about 21, 22, I did some understudying for English National Opera, and that was all going on at the same time. And I was travelling here, there and everywhere. And I think the more opera I did, the lonelier I got. And I thought, gosh, I'm not sure I want to do this for the rest of my career. So I decided actually to go very much back into consort singing, which I really enjoyed. And I auditioned for the alto spot, the second alto spot in the King Singers. And, by some miracle managed to get that job, and then had a wonderful time traveling the world with them. But I think still after 7 years of touring with the King Singers, I sort of, I don't know, there was something missing. And I decided that maybe music wasn't the thing for me, singing wasn't the thing for me. I got terribly nervous when I was singing. And so I decided I should have a break from it and maybe see if there was anything else in life. I went off to Switzerland to learn how to ski properly. Never quite managed that. I mean, I skied a lot and broke a lot of bones, but I couldn't ever say I ski properly. And whilst I was there, the village I was in, one of the residents was Lady Valerie Schulte, the widow of the great conductor Sir George. And we would regularly meet for coffee in the mornings and have discussions about this, that and the other. And one day she said, a friend of mine at Geneva Cathedral would like some choral music for a concert at Christmas time. Could you organise that? And I thought, well, I suppose I could. And I got lots of my friends from professional groups, and I put these people together, and we went and did a concert, and it was a great success. And whilst I was doing it, I just thought, I think I might have discovered that this is actually what I want to be doing most of all. And so I packed up my skis, came back to the UK after 3 years, and started my choir Tenebrae. And ever since then, I've just been, I believe I lead a charmed existence, working with these staggeringly good singers and musicians and wonderful people. And there we are. That's in a nutshell how I am here today. So welcome everybody. For those that are joining us late, this is the week for the Self-Isolation Choir, singing and working on Gregorio Allegri's setting of the Miserere. Now, before we go on, I think I would like to just sort of get you singing a little bit, maybe working. I can't really do this because I've got a microphone right here, but what I'd like you to do, if you can, is stand up and just sort of, I know, after the stresses and the rigours of the day, if you're like me, you've been trapped inside with children doing homeschooling. Oh, what a joy that is, eh? And just roll the shoulders backwards and then forwards, the right one, the left one. This is all just to loosen you up, ready to get you singing, get the lungs working, and just roll your head around very gently, neck sort of one way and then the other, and shake your hands out if there's any tension, to sort of shake the tension down your arms from your shoulders through your fingers, so you sort of throw that tension away. And the same with your feet, sort of, so stand on one leg and just shake the tension out, then on the other side. And then when we want to sing, as I mentioned just briefly a moment ago, when I was in the King Singers, I started to get very nervous when I was singing, and I would sing in rehearsals and my breath control would be absolutely fantastic. I'd sing a phrase in one breath, and then I'd get to the concert and I would take what I thought was an enormous gulp of air, and I'd be running out of breath before I got to the end. And once I'd seen an Alexander technique teacher, she told me, look, it's nerves. Basically, as soon as you get tense, around the back of your lungs and the tops of your legs, everything kind of clamps together and it restricts your lung capacity. Your lungs actually can't move. And so a really key thing is to try and make sure this tension when you're singing doesn't creep in. Now, one very good trick I used is, if you're standing up, put your feet underneath your hips, not together and not too far apart, but underneath your hips, so it feels pretty natural. And then I want you to lock your knees, actually forcibly lock them. And that was the sort of position, that was what was happening when I was singing and getting more and more nervous. So my thighs and everything would lock from there upwards, all around my core and my back, and that was what was causing this sort of tension. So now I want you to lock them and then unlock them, and then lock and then unlock, and actually see if you can feel the difference. And if ever you're in a concert and you feel you're kind of getting tight, whatever, that's quite a good little exercise to do. So so we're going to do a little bit of humming. I'll do this in my tenor voice. I was an alto, a bit like Gregorio Allegri. He was an alto in the choir of the Sistine Chapel. But I can't sing alto anymore, and you wouldn't want to hear what's left of my alto voice. So let's start on a G. So we're going to just hum very gently. Smooth as you possibly can. Okay, and what I'm doing, I'm trying to smile whilst I'm, terrified of 900 people that I can't see who are listening, hanging off every word I say. I'm trying to smile. My singing professor at the Royal College of Music said, okay, you've got an okay voice, but it'll be a lot better if you just smile through everything. And I was thinking, what's he talking about? And actually, what he meant was, and so when I just got used to this idea of smiling all the time when I was singing, that was my default position. My cheeks have gone up here. Don't know if you can see that. Yeah, 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 yeah. Can you hear a difference there when I do that? Yeah, 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 yeah. And it's no effort. I'm not placing my voice anywhere differently. I am simply smiling. And I think that is something we will, certainly with the Allegri, which is lots of Latin, lots of this Italianate ecclesiastical Latin, which I like. I like a really bright, steely tone almost. And the best way to just maintain it, even through the darker vowels, is to set this sort of position. Smile. Yeah, yeah. And feel those cheeks up there. And then you are not going to let them down. Even if you're singing an O vowel. I mustn't look at the photo of me or the screen where my face is down there, because then I see how hideous and ridiculous I look. So I'll try to concentrate on you guys. So yeah, 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 yo, 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 yo. Do you get the idea? So all the way. Miserere mei Deus, not Deus, otherwise it drops too much. So a bit more of that humming. And then upper semitone. And another semitone. And another one. And another one. I'm trying to smile and now yeah, da, da. So there's our G minor triad. It's probably just worth singing. Okay, let's do something on a vowel. Yeah, just over a fifth. And what I'm doing, I'm sliding up. Another thing that singers suffer from with breath control, problems with breath control, which always lead to tension, is they lose air going from one note to another. And the best exercise to get rid of this is just to slide around, just on one vowel. And then you drop the consonants in and you get used to that feeling, even if there are big leaps, that actually not that you don't have air escaping. A German coach once said to me, imagine you've got a candle in front of you and there's a flame there, and you basically want to sing with text and try not to make the flame flicker unless you're being very expressive with something and you want to go far. You can probably hear the air rush over the microphone there. I'm weird. Mine still says 20. I'm trying to read messages and I just can't. There are too many of them. I'll just ask for a quick feedback from Mark or Ben, see if it's still okay. And then I think we should probably start singing, listen to a bit of the track. Whilst I'm waiting for that message to come through, I'll tell you a little bit about this piece. The Miserere, it's a setting of Psalm 51, written by Gregorio Allegri in the, I think it's the early 17th century. He was around 1620, 1630, that kind of time. And he was appointed as an alto or countertenor in the Sistine Chapel choir, and he wrote music for them that was performed exclusively. That's not the right word for an ecclesiastical setting, but you know what I mean. It was sung by them exclusively. And the Allegri, of course, has become incredibly famous as a Renaissance piece of music because of this top C. Whether or not it's authentic, I think there's a growing academic argument that it's probably inauthentic and that it was simply down to an error by a copyist at some point when the music was being handed around. Mozart went to the Sistine Chapel. This piece had become famous for all its decorations, and Mozart went there when he was 14, and apparently went home or to wherever he was staying and wrote the music out from memory. And that kind of seems like it's an amazing thing, but when you know the music, and it's not actually that complicated, for a genius like Mozart, who almost certainly had perfect pitch, it would have been relatively simple for him to write it out. And any decent music student in this day and age could easily do the same. At some point, that music made its way to the UK, and then when it was being printed, I think there was a Dr. Charles Burnley who got hold of it and was printing copies and gave the music to a copyist. And it's thought that maybe there was an error, and that so halfway through every other verse, which is sung by the smaller choir of 4 voices, the music actually was probably just transposed up a fourth by accident, and that's kind of how we ended up with this ya da 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 da, the G to the C. In the first half of the verses, ya da da ba da 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 da. It goes from a D to a G, and of course that's the leap of the fourth. And then the second half of the verse, it's gone up a fourth, which takes it from a G to a top C. I think writing top Cs in that time was pretty unusual. Although Allegri, his music was very much in the style of the early Baroque. When he was writing for the Sistine Chapel Choir, he was very much in the school of Palestrina. So Renaissance polyphony, that kind of thing. And it would have been very rare to have music written up to a top C. So anyway, doesn't matter. Here we are all these centuries later, and everybody loves it. And of course, it was made famous by a BBC broadcast, radio broadcast in, I think it was 1963, from King's College Chapel. And they were broadcasting an evensong on Ash Wednesday. And there was a little boy called Roy Goodman, one of the choristers, who in the afternoon was playing rugby, apparently. And he was hoiked out of his rugby match. I know Roy actually very well. He's a mean squash player. Well, he's a squash player who's mean. And he's mad about sports. So he says that he was really quite cross to be pulled off the rugby pitch into a choir practice. And then they had their choir practice and went into the broadcast. And the whole thing was live. And I've still got that recording, and it's still one of the finest I've ever heard. Absolutely extraordinary for a boy of that age to be able to deliver those lines. And it was so sublime in that magical acoustic of King's College Chapel that it was later turned into a recording. And it's still incredibly successful. And I think, every choir up and down, the length of the UK, including those of my 2 children here in Cambridge, do the Allegri every year, and they're always searching for their Roy Goodman. I'm not sure many have found a boy quite as good as that yet. I'm sure many get close. But anyway, so that's a little bit of history about the piece. And it's performed in, Ash Wednesday, but also it's specifically for services in Holy Week. There are a set of services, special services for Holy Week called Tenebrae, and each different service is called an office, so the offices of Tenebrae, and these go through the night of Spy Wednesday into Maundy Thursday and Good Friday. So the services are actually for Maundy Thursday, Good Friday and Holy Saturday. And I think there's one called Gallicantus, and that happens at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I hope the music that was written for those sort of services was nice and easy for the poor choristers that would have had to get up in the middle of the night. But it just must have been absolutely extraordinary to go into that chapel by candlelight alone, and hear and sing this music and hear it sort of wafting around in the acoustic. It's one of the reasons why when I started Tenebrae is the Latin word for shadows. Why we did it is because a lot of the music we sing in cathedrals, there would never have been electric light, shining on the singers' faces or anything like that. There would have been candlelight alone, and it must have been just a magical setting. Actually, it just reminded me of a story that was told to me by a friend, Richard Baker, who was a chorister at King's College, Cambridge, back in the 1950s with director Boris Ord. And he told me that when there were choristers, it was not that long after the end of World War II, and all the stained glass in the chapel had been taken out of the chapel for safekeeping, and they didn't replace it with anything. They didn't have anything. So all the window frames were just empty. So the chapel was quite often freezing, and the choir still had to sing every day through the winter, you name it. And he said they had their candles on the choir stalls, so they could just about see their music. But it was so dark that they couldn't even see the ceiling of the chapel in the winter, and it was so cold, and if it was blowing and raining, the rain would come in through the windows over their music, and sometimes the rain would sort of get on down the glass tube, and the candles would go out and leave them sort of having to sing from memory. But it's quite an extraordinary thing to think in that chapel that you would have had that music wafting around by candlelight with no windows, just the noise of the wind to accompany you. Anyway, we are going to I think I should play through this thing. If you want to sing along, then absolutely do. Ya da da. So that's the soprano note. I can't sing a falsetto anymore, I'm sorry. So no, I can't get anywhere near it. La la, that's the second soprano note. That's the alto note. Basses and tenors. So everybody got their notes. I'm going to play it for you, and hopefully we'll go through all of this, and then we'll do a little bit of work together. So enjoy, folks. I shall just take a little breather. I hope you can all hear me okay, and look forward to catching up with you in a few minutes after I've played this. I hope the levels are okay. Right. Oh, I actually sang that soprano solo, the top C bit, twice as a boy. Once when I was about 12, and I think it was sort of passable. And then again when I was 14 or 14 and a half, and I used to play a lot of rugby, and I was quite a decent rugby player. And I remember my voice had actually broken, but I had this sort of falsetto, which is what became my sort of alto voice. And if I was singing my falsetto around, anything like that or below, it'd be, oh, I was absolutely hopeless. But I could ping out all these top C's and things. And I was messing around in the church one day after a rehearsal, and the choir master sort of said, "Who's that? Who's that? Who's that?" And I sort of, "It's me." And he said, "Oh, can you still do the Allegri?" And I said, "Well, I'm not really sure." So he sort of dragged me off into the upstairs room, and we went through it. And he said, "Right, you're doing it." And we went off to Tewkesbury Abbey for a Saturday evening song, and we were doing the Allegri there. And I was kind of I felt a bit weird standing on the back row in the choir, and then for the Allegri coming forward, and then taking over these top C's in place of all the little boys in front of me. And I think the bass in the quartet was very nervous. So he went harder when he was on those middle C's. He went really sharp, and we ended up a semitone. I could not, for the life of me, I kept singing in tune, and it made me sound really flat. And the only way I could sound in tune was actually by going sharp with this bass. I haven't spoken to him since. But yeah, it ended up being a whole semitone sharp, and was an extremely uncomfortable experience, probably for the listeners as well as me. So lots of lovely things about the music that we're going to talk about. First of all, what I should tell you is how things are going to work. We're going to go through the whole piece with everybody today, all together, and I'll talk about how the lines interact with each other, and what we're after really as an overall effect by the end of the week. So today is a full choir sing through. Tomorrow we have got first sopranos at 3:30 for an hour. And so all those sopranos, make sure you do lots of warming up, because we will all be, well, I won't, all of you will be singing the top C's. I mean, anybody is welcome to join any of these sessions this week. And of course, anybody can have a go at the top C's. Gentlemen, you are more than welcome if you really want. I'm sure there's a rusty old pair of nutcrackers sitting around somewhere in your houses to help you on your way. And then second sopranos tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And then Wednesday it's altos. So I shall brush off my falsetto and try and... No, I won't. At that 5 o'clock. Thursday, tenors at 6 o'clock. That day I have a board meeting with Tenebrae at 4 o'clock, so I will have done that for 2 hours before. So watch out, tenors. I might be a little bit grumpy. And Friday is the bass one, so end of the week we'll have a gin and tonic or something lined up, and that's at 5 o'clock. And then on Saturday the full choir version, when we all sing it through, having practiced it all week and got our top C's in sublime condition, top sopranos, will be at 5 o'clock. And then you can record your own voice, which we will combine in the studio for a full self-isolation choir version, and that will go out on the 17th of April at 7 o'clock. I'd say you can come to as many sessions as you like. You can, I gather you can pause this if you get really bored with me at any time. You can walk away. Do come back if you please. You can go and have a coffee, have something to eat, and then when you come back you can just press the pause button, and it'll you'll be welcomed back to my voice droning on and on and on. I think that is about it. So we're back to the music. So, there's our G minor triad. And as I say, I like this really bright Italian note. Misera. You see how dull it becomes very quickly if I let all of this drop. For those of you that weren't here earlier, my default position with my face is smiling. And actually, one good exercise for you to really become aware of how active your face can be is if you can do this with me, bear with me, scrunch your face up as much as you can. So really close your eyes as tight as you possibly can, and your mouth and your cheeks. And when I say after 3, just open up everything really wide. So 1, 2, 3. God, I look absolutely awful on the screen. Okay, and do that once more. Really, really scrunch your face up. And then 1, 2, 3. Okay. And now put your singing face in that smiling position. And these cheeks, you should really be able to, feel them working and get used to them being involved when you're singing, so that all the time you're kind of reminding yourself, even if it's a dark ooh or an oh or oh sound, you can still have a brightness to it, which comes through your smiley face. If you ever see a brilliant recitalist, they don't sort of have a blank expression, or they're not just thinking about, if they're good at recitalist, they're not just thinking about their technique and keeping everything free and lazy and floating. They kind of have an excitement in their eyes, an engagement, and there's a life there, and a lot of it comes through this looking around. Their cheeks are working all the time, and it just helps create a bright. You don't have to work any harder at the sound, the timbre. This just brightens it all the time. So I think it's worth, if you like it, then actually you can start using that in other things that you sing. But yeah, I particularly like it for this Italian thing, this music in a church. It really gives a ring, a brightness to it. I tend not to like probably the sound I made as a boy, which was a bit of a woolly sound. I think most cathedral choirs, church choirs these days, we're all taught, children are taught to make a brighter sound, and I think it's very good for the music, and it's also good for singing technique. So we're going to do that all all the way through. Remember, scrunch your face and then open. That reminds me actually of a story not a story. I was in France somewhere with a choir, a French choir, doing some workshops, and we were working on this, and Tenebrae were all in amongst them, and I did this exercise, and somebody from the local newspaper was there taking a photograph, and I, even though I do the count 1, 2, 3, I didn't react properly. So there's a lovely shot of this French choir working with Tenebrae and me, and everybody's like this, totally alive, apart from me in the middle, who's still screwed up. And I'd done the count and then hadn't actually opened my face. But they are one of my many limitations, I'm afraid. Can't do 2 things at once. Typical man. Right. So we're going to have a look at this music. Yeah, da, da, there's our G major, G minor triad basses. I can't sing down there. Rather than trying to squeeze the sound out at the bottom basses on that low F, just relax. And if it doesn't completely focus to start with, don't go looking for the focus, because all you're going to do is narrow the sound. And actually what you want it to do is open up across your chest. Basses, you can do it, but the more you open and relax down there, actually the more resonance you'll find all over your chest, and that is very important. Tenors and altos, if you look at the first beat of bar 3, the chord there gets really rather fruity. You've got E flat in the bass and the triad notes from the soprano, but you've also got an added 7th and a 9th or a 2nd. And I always like it if you crescendo to that point in this music. So every verse we have, you're going to put a little crescendo in there. excuse me. These modern notation in music, of course, when we sing Renaissance music, it's rather frustrating that we see all of the parts all of the time, and that everything is written out very strictly in 4 beats, 3 beats, whatever. I think when you're singing a psalm like this, a little bit like Anglican chant, you ought to be freer. If you're a choir director, it doesn't have to be it's kind of there as a guide, I think, and it's become more and more part and parcel of the way modern choirs perform this music, and that's not always a great thing. So if you've got any bars like miserere, where you've got text and it's written out, if you're a choir director, feel free to let them go. There are some obvious moments later in the piece where we've got a lot of syllables to get through, and I just say to my lot in Tenebrae, look, just sing it as if you're speaking it. Recitativo is what you would call it in opera, but it's kind of speech rhythm. So secundum mania, and then as we go into the polyphonic bit, this is where all the lines separate and start at different times. Then we do need to sing in time, otherwise you don't get the structure of the harmony and the movement where the composer wants them. So we basses again in bar 8 to 9. Yeah. I love that low G to really be big and rich. So again, don't go digging for it, but never sort of try not to make the upper G much softer than the loud one. Try to make them even, and imagine that the lower G is actually louder than the top one. And then sopranos, you have this, your entries, they're beautiful, they're kind of overlapping over the top of each other. Whenever a part enters, don't try and make yourself heard, just sing at the same level as the parts that are already in. If anything, the parts that are already in should reduce a tiny bit, but I personally like it if they just all stay the same level. And then sopranos, you have this cascading effect in bar 10. Da, 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 and you overlap. Always kind of sing those notes as you go into bar 10, and then just let it fall, like you're pushing something at the top of a hill, and then it just, as you go into that crotchet movement, it just flows down, it cascades away, and then the cadence just sort of floats away. I'm going to mention something now about something called staggered breathing. I don't know if everybody here will know exactly what that is. Quite often in modern choral music, certainly for my pathetic lungs, and especially when I was nervous, I find a lot of phrases are too long to sing in one breath. And so choirs have developed this skill of staggered breathing. So if you've got 4 altos, rather than having an organised whole, at certain points you will all want to breathe together. But in a line of polyphony, like we've got in this piece, I think it's better to sort of just quietly agree that you will, altos 1 and 2 will breathe in one place, and then the 3 and 4 definitely don't breathe there. Then that way you can sustain the line for as long as you want without any gaps. And I would say in this kind of music, other than where it makes sense to breathe in the text, where there's a comma, for example, then you should do that. Of course, it's very difficult when we're all separate to know exactly what to do, but basically it's governed by when you're going to run out of breath. And I think for singers, when you're kind of about to snatch a breath, try to resist the temptation, because all you do, that is heard by everybody, and on the microphone as well. So it's good for the final recording if we don't have that. Sort of just imagine that you're fading out of the sound, take a quiet but proper, relaxed, silent breath, and then come back into the sound gradually, wherever that may be. You don't add any extra consonants or whatever, but you do that so that really you're creating this illusion that the sound is just floating away with only a few breaths being taken by people. I hope that makes sense. Should we have another go at the first verse? Glass of water, I think. I promise it's only water. The other stuff comes a bit later. So here we go. Yeah. Oh, ouch. That's horrible, isn't it? La dee dee. Here we go. We're going to try this now. Remember, bright face, and don't let those cheeks drop. Okay. Here we go. Oh, no, we don't. Altos, tenors, basses, free. Okay, very good. So tenors in bar 8. That octave leap. A good way to... I always feel with octave leaps in vocal music, no matter what part you're singing, sopranos, altos or basses, it's always good to energize the lower note. It just gives you a little kick before you go on. And it also means that you don't go, You hear the gap, which I said earlier, we mustn't have in this kind of music. You need to sustain the sound as much as possible. So, and thank goodness I'm a conductor and not a singer anymore. But anyway, that's important to do that. Altos, you kick us off. Always enjoy that. Don't be bound. I know it needs to be in time, but I think it always wants to be sung with some expression and with some feeling of shape, rather than a sort of robotic tempo in your minds. And then let's do that once more, and then we'll go on to the chant. So the chant here. Again, this should be in totally free tempo, and this is it's the tonus peregrinus chant, isn't it? There are different plain Gregorian chant. There are different tunes, if you like, for psalms on each day. So on a feast day, it might be one of the sort of ones like tonus peregrinus. Or that's a very common one, the simple tone. But for tonus peregrinus, for the important services of Tenebrae, it would have been this one. If you listen to that old recording of King's College, Cambridge, they actually do the simple tone, which is the wrong one. And it also has the effect, doesn't it? At the end of the first verse of harmony, which we're just about to, you've got that D major chord, and then the chant comes in on and that interval wouldn't have happened. That wouldn't have been allowed. So when you're doing the plain song, if you ever see any of those old copies and the chant starts on a B flat, then it's the wrong one. You want to be doing this one, the tonus peregrinus. And this wants to be as free as possible. I think if you understand the Latin, then you'll know where the syllabic stresses are. Et secundum multitudinem miserationum tuarum. Dele iniquitatem meam. Very floaty, very easy. Okay, let's have another listen to that first verse and that chant and see how we get on. So you've got the notes. Ya da da. Mi. Scrunch up the face and then open, and then nice bright miserere. And we're going to go. Here it goes. Let's go on. Brilliant. These guys that recorded it obviously recorded it in their own, their own bedrooms or wherever they live, and not together. So it's very interesting for me to hear these individual singers whose voices and their singing I know so well, and little habits that when we're together with Tenebrae, they know me well enough. If I look at them for something, they kind of know that I don't want them to do that. So I won't name the bass, but at the end, do you hear that in the solo verse? And he would never do that if we're standing together. We don't realise how much information, when we're in the same space working and singing together, how much we're using our ears all the time to listen to one another. So when you're singing on your own, that's how you would support the sound. After a very long phrase, you'd give a little sort of kick here. So the bass does it with extremely good vocal technique. But when you're together, you wouldn't do it because you wouldn't have four singers doing it like that. It's very fascinating for me, sort of hear them working like this without each other. And one other thing interesting about breath, I always say with Tenebrae, I am kind of the conductor and the director, but at the beginning I work very much as a singer. When I want them to sing, I'm always breathing with them, and so my hands are reflecting the breath, and you can, I want them to listen for the breath almost more than I want them to watch, the beat. I've never in 20 years said to a Tenebrae choir, you're behind the beat, we're not together, and it's purely because we're not listening. You have to work sideways with your ears as well as watching me and sort of doing all this business. So let's go back to this verse. Altos, you've got that low bit. If you can get through that octave leap with no breath, then I really like it, because I like to hear the energy on the lower note sort of spring up. And the danger is if you take a breath on the low G, actually you're the only harmony note at that point. So it becomes a weak moment, rather than if it crescendo, make it, louder, so you energize the octave leap. It then gives a rhythmic impulse for the soprano. To spring off so that she can get some rhythm into that phrase which starts on the top G. And then et peccato meo. And here, this is one of those moments where we do need to go back into a sort of tempo, just as the soprano sings her top C phrase, and lots of sopranos have registered their displeasure with me as I sort of try to keep and I keep them in tempo, and they're kind of looking at me as they're getting cross-eyed, running out of breath. In our YouTube clip of this piece, Josephine Stevenson is the amazing soprano who does the top C's, and I think she's one of the very few girls that can actually get through this phrase without taking a breath, without always taking a breath. Sometimes she does it, sometimes she doesn't. Don't know why. Whether it's a particular vowel where she can conserve the air, the breath. I don't know, but it's fairly extraordinary. And so, of course, another thing to say about this piece is that we're doing a shortened version of this. There are lots and lots of verses, but we've got a shortened version of the piece because the music is quite repetitive. So I wonder how we got on with all of that. I think we should play that. We should play on, really. Play on. So we're going to Quoniam iniquitatem meam ego cognosco. And very tricky, but even if you're singing in a room with carpets and furniture, curtains like me, imagine you're in a church. Gnosco. So you don't end up with that sort of big stop there. Gnosco. You just phrase off as if you're leaving the note in the acoustic in the church, and it's just going to take it and go down the length of King's College Chapel and then come back, and with the distance, of course, the Doppler effect, it'll be a quarter of a tone flat by the time it's gone 320 meters or whatever. And then we're going into our next full verse. This is one where we start at that speech rhythm, recitativo. Tibi soli peccavi et malum. And then into bar 33, altos and tenors. Everybody crescendos to that moment. Da 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 feci. At the end of feci there's a crotchet rest. It's only for modern notation. In some editions of this piece, it goes fe, 2, 3, 4, chi. And it's 2 whole beats. For me, that sounds a little bit unnatural and like it's been extended purely for our modern notation devices, and that's a bit of a shame. So it's a weak syllable on the word fetchy. So I've made it short, and then the crotchet rest is just a crotchet rest. It's just a breath before you go on with ut justificeris in sermonibus tuis et vincas. And so I've put these rhythms in because I think it's kind of I feel it's close to the natural rhythm that you would say these words in sermonibus. Be very careful here that you don't let everything drop. Ut justifice. You've got 2 dark vowels there, so keep the smile going through it. And then in sermonibus tuis et vincas. You keep the sound up all the time. Cum judica. Oh, isn't that? Oh, that's worth a fortune, that sound. Altos, you need a little bit of smile in that. Cum judica. Just enjoy all of that sound. Basses, the energized sort of leap there. Tenors, and then sopranos cascading. Okay, I think we can go on with this, can't we? So let's go. I think we're going to come in at bar 29. Quoniam iniquitatem meam. Tenors, basses, anybody that wants to sing this plain chant, sopranos, altos as well, just have a go if you like it. I mean, I find chant is beautiful. I absolutely adore it. I sang at Westminster Cathedral Choir for 5 years. I was at Westminster Abbey as a 19-year-old. I was sang there with Simon Preston for 2 years, but then I moved a bus ride away, 2 stops in fact, down to Westminster Cathedral. So I used to adore singing all this chant, even though I was the countertenor. James O'Donnell, the then director of music, was very kind and said, "Oh, all right, you can sing it as long as it's not too loud and we can't hear you," which is very nice of him. And so I just find that these lines, they're actually very good for airflow and for sort of shape and good technique. So here we go. This is bar 29, Quoniam.
Quoniam iniquitatem meam ego cognosco, et peccatum meum contra me est semper.
Right, smiley face.
Tibi soli peccavi et nocum defecti. Ut justificaris in sermonibus tuis et vincas, Eccederim in iniquitatibus conceptus sum, et in peccatis concepit me mater mea. Eccederim voluntatem
Sorry, I'll cut Jeremy Budd off in his prime there. You just hear the singers running out of breath there, can't you? It's funny, again, when you're singing on your own, recording these long lines, when you've got people next to you, you can kind of just squeeze out that little bit of extra air if you really need to, and you know when you're going to finish. But when there's nobody standing next to you, you're kind of guessing in the dark. Actually, Jeremy Budd is the tenor singing this plain chant. And for anybody that's a bit of a choral geek like me, you'll know the name Jeremy Budd because he was a star treble from St Paul's Cathedral and made several recordings with him doing all the famous solos like the Allegri and Hear My Prayer. Amazing tenor and brilliant guy. So there you are. Right, so you have to be careful there, tenors or anybody doing this chant. Ecce enim in iniquitatibus. There's an extra in there, and it's not a misprint. It is meant to be there. So just make sure you take your time and you flow through it. Ecce enim in iniquitatibus conceptusum. Yeah, God, that was rubbish, wasn't it? Anyway, I'm sure you can get it right. So you're getting the idea of all this free speech. Going back to free speech, the rhythm, bar 31. Tibi soli peccavi, and then ut justificaris in sermonibus tuis et vincas. When you do this with choirs, I think you should feel free. Obviously, the way we're recording this, I think we have to go with the guys as a guide. Obviously, the end result will be interesting. And then the solo verse, Incerta et occulta sapientiae tue manifestasti. So try not to just see a whole load of crotchets there. Look at the words almost. Forget about the notation, the crotchets. Incerta et occulta sapientiae tue manifestasti. And then you'll kind of, I think it's much easier to flow through all of that. And then we're going to sing Asperges me isopo et mundabo in ecclesiastical Latin. I think at Westminster Cathedral when I was there, we were told not to pronounce H's in Latin, so not hisopo, but isopo. Asperges me isopo et mundabo. Lavabis me et super nivem de albabo. Again, the smile in the thing. And the next one, I love this. It comes on the offbeat and it starts with the word ow, ow. Auditui meo. And if you think auditui, then you haven't got it. Imagine you're being pinched. Ow. And that brightness in the sound, I really like that. And again, it just gets the whole verse off to a really bright, strong start. Auditui meo dabis gaudium et letitia et exultabunt ossa. And then umiliata. I quite like this verse to be a little bit quieter. So why don't we try that? And then it's another verse of chant. Sacrificium Deo Spiritus contribuatus, cor contritum et humiliatum. That's a real mouthful, isn't it? And then solo verse. We're gonna play through to the end here. So I'll quickly talk through it. Benigne fac Domine in bona voluntate tua. Sorry, I'm jumping around vocal parts. That's all fairly self-explanatory. And then we get to this verse that for some reason, after all these years and all the choirs I've ever performed it with, we at Tenebrae are no different from any other choir. For some reason, this tunk always creates a moment of doubt in the minds of singers. Surely there's plain chant. No, there isn't. I don't know how many times I've asked people to write it in the score, jump in as if it's a surprise, and then therefore you get an energized breath. And that energized breath means nobody's left in any doubt that you're about to sing. If you try and creep in, it just doesn't work. So I make this one a big, strong tunc acceptabis sacrificium justitiae. Again, ignore the quavers and the triplet crotchets. They're only there as a guide. Sacrificium justitiae, and that crotchet rest is just a breath. Tunc acceptabis sacrificium justitiae oblati. And then you're back into the measured time. So we'll have a few goes at that. And this word et holocausta. I always like diphthongs, and there are some even in Latin here. Causta, rather than causta. Very English Latin. Holocausta. Holocausta. You leave it sort of towards the end, but you do definitely put it in for me. And then we have the final flourish where the two choirs, the main choir of 5 parts and the choir of 4 parts, come together. When Tenebrae perform this, we actually put the solo quartet somewhere else, and then for this last bit, they move together. And this is very kind of solemn, this last bit of music. Really quite magical, I think, as the whole thing sung. This is actually at the end of the Tenebrae services, so it's almost the very last thing you'll hear in the service. And you hear this and then you just drift off into the darkness. The candles have probably run out anyway by then. Burnt down. Funnily enough, I remember singing this. I won't name the group or the conductor, but I sang this in on tour in America, and I was in the solo quartet. And because everybody knew it, and I was relatively new to the group, I hadn't performed it. And the conductor said, "Look, we don't need to run this, do we?" And everybody said, no, it'll be fine. And that's fine. You know, I wasn't worried about the notes. But what I wasn't prepared for is, and everybody takes it slowly as well, slower than the main piece. So I was prepared for that as well. What I wasn't prepared for, and I hope your cameras can see this, was for what this conductor did from a distance. I mean, he was only trying to be helpful and so that we could be in no doubt. But so we got to this point, and he did this. From the top right to the bottom. And I was so surprised. I laughed all the way through. I don't think I sang a single note of it. And it was like he was on an airport runway giving sort of, directions to the plane. Yes, right a bit, left a bit. And I was sort of thinking, where's the first beat, the second beat? Is the top one, is that beat 1? Is that beat 1, 2? And I just giggled my way quietly through the entire thing, and then came to a big bow. at the end. Anyway, so look, we're going to go on back to, where had we got to? I think we had done, well, I'll just play it. I think we get, Asperges me isopo. Asperges me isopo. So this is bar 40, where is it? Bar 60 on page, don't have page numbers, 6, page 6. I can see that, my eyesight's so bad. Right, asperges me isopo et mundabor, lavabis me et supernivem de albabor. Here we go, and then we'll go through to the end now, I think. Yeah, da 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 da. Oh gosh, here we go. We'll just get the end of this verse beforehand. Just see if you can hear some of the singers running out of breath just at the end. Ow.
Sacrificium Deo Spiritus contemplibus natus, quo contemplitum et humiliatum Deus non despicies. Bene factor mea, in bona voluntate
Oh, funny. After all these years, from hearing it when I was 7 years old for the first time, now 70 years later, or not far off, it's always got a bit of a magic about it, this piece. When you sing this piece with other singers in a building, that last chord, you can kind of sense, if your conductor works anything like me, then you can kind of sense how much air there is, how much breath there is left for that last phrase. It's always nice if it can just go on. You have to do that thing called staggered breathing that I was talking about earlier. You have to cheat silently at a different place from everybody else, so actually by the time you get to that last chord, you've got enough gas in the tank just to fade away and do a diminuendo, because it doesn't want to be too abrupt. It's not a big dramatic moment. It's very serene and solemn. So right, what there were a couple of other things I was going to say. Sopranos. When you get down to the F in the solo verse, the high sopranos, always, even if it's in the middle of a word, feel you can take a breath. Yeah. It's just, as I say, it's very rare any soprano can get through the whole thing, and sometimes you get sopranos trying it, and either they sort of do that thing on the last note and they fall off, or they're squeezing the sound so much that the quality of the sound they make, even if they can hold the note to the end, it just isn't quite as sweet as if they just take a breath in the middle. It always feels perfectly natural and acceptable to me. So I would, if I were you, I would definitely do that. We'll just have. I'm just going to consult my sheet here. I think that's kind of getting on for the last run through. Ben and Mark, all the comments that were coming through, I'm not able to read them all, but if anybody's got any obvious questions that you want me to answer, maybe Ben, you can send me a message via WhatsApp. Any sort of serious queries, but otherwise I think we're all good. And I would just like to say once more how brilliant this is to be involved in this from the comfort of our own homes. I would much rather be in a freezing cold hall somewhere with you all huddled up in coats and seeing the steam, not the steam, the condensation coming out, as you breathe in freezing cold air and then sing. I'd much rather we were all together, and we will be. It looks like there's light at the end of the tunnel, so hopefully we're out of this wretched pandemic soon and can all see each other and be together again and sing with our friends. But loving being involved in this. I think self-isolation choir is an absolutely brilliant concept and wonderful thing that you guys have all got going and that you're all part of, and I'm very very lucky to be invited to come and spend some time with you. So look, I hope you're all asleep by now. I will see First Sopranos tomorrow at what time did I say? I did say 3:30, and then Second Sopranos at 5 o'clock. So I propose for now we're going to play through to the end, just play the whole thing through, have a nice listen, just try and think about those things I mentioned in each respective part and the text. It's only about, this is the shortened version, it's about 8 minutes, and then if there are any burning questions that anybody's given to the self-isolation choir guys, I will answer it at the end. Otherwise I will just sort of be around to quickly say goodbye and see you later in the week. But thank you for your patience, and I hope this has all worked smoothly. So here is the Allegri once more all the way through.
Excellere iniquitatis conceptus sum, et in peccatis concepit membras elea.
thank you, everybody. I think that is it for today. Thank you ever so much for joining me, and I really look forward to seeing you all later this week. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening, morning, afternoon, wherever it is, wherever you are. But thank you very much. Bye-bye.